Hi everyone, this is Suzanne Wagner. Welcome to the Numerology and the Astrology for July 29th, 2020. If you add all those numbers together, you get the number 22. And if you add the 2 and the 2 together, you get the number 4. So you've heard me say before that sometimes I take the 2 and the 2, break them apart, and then see how they connect to the number 4. The 2 plus 2 is negative mind plus critical mind in the quest for harmony and balance, which is the number 4. So do 2 negatives make a positive? Well, yeah, sometimes. Sometimes things have to get like a double dose of negativity before we really decide to shift gears and we decide to change. Seems to be what's happening at the moment. That in a normal reality, one of the hundreds of things that have been happening over the last 4 years would have been enough to set things off and force change and make things happen. And yet we're in a very unique moment in time where clearly there is just so much shadow, and there's so much denial, and there's so much avoidance, and there's so much numbness, and there's so much ego, and there's so much projection, and there's so much I know better, that it's been compounding the analyzing of the mind. So it is really, really, really difficult right now for people to even figure out what is true and what is not true. There's so much misinformation. There's so much confusing information. And again, what I've said before is that people have become very specialized in certain things. Like, you know, you watch the TV shows on Egyptology, and they talk about all this information that they have in their head, all these experts about Egyptian history, and it's mind-boggling how much they have in there. And then yet you wonder how functional they are in other areas, because whenever you get great skill in one area, you usually get a dysfunction or an eccentricity in others. The same thing is true with the scientists that are like the space scientists, the physicists, and like what they know about outer space and atoms and energy and black holes and all this kind of stuff is so monumental. And we are really limited in this dimension around awareness and understanding because of our brain. I mean, our brain is limited as to what it can hold. Now, we are limitless as a soul, and we can expand our limitation with the quest for knowledge and the seeking of information. But acquiring that knowledge is very difficult in a state of confusion. Like, who do you listen to? What do you trust? And when any new information comes in, we have our negative mind or critical mind that immediately will discount it and say, oh, that's not true, that's bullshit, da 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 da. And I'm kind of like, well, things are true on the level of perception and the bubble of perception that they were manifested in. And in that bubble, they are very real. But the problem is it's not the only bubble. And that's where it gets really tricky. So when you take this double negativity, the 2 and the 2, and you push them together, what's going to happen is you're going to get, this negative mind and this critical mind, and they get pulled for more and more into an extreme. Or if you're looking at a pendulum, if the pendulum gets swung further and further and further over here, that means that the force that it's going to come back is going to be really aggressive and dramatic. And what I can tell you about this time is that I absolutely know that the force of this much resistance to change and truth, the backswing is going to be one heck of a backswing. And so it's going to be interesting to see how we all handle that. And that's going to eventually happen. The bigger question is, what are you going to do when that actually happens? So I'm shocked and horrified at the terrible events happening in our world, as was everybody else. And the fact that those things in the past would have set something in motion that would have instantly stopped this insane forward progression that has been dangerous and destructive. But it didn't. So the negativity keeps moving forward at a speed that I honestly never believed that I would witness in this country ever. And that tells me that something terrible is coming to balance out all this hatred and negativity. That seems to be the only way to rein in this rampant, destructive emotional progression. I pray for sane minds to rise up and stop this insanity, but we are still waiting. So, you have to find your own center, which is the number 4, because this world is tilted out of balance at the moment. You can't depend on the world to keep that balance, and you have to find a way to maintain your own balance regardless of what the rest of the world is doing. The astrology today is pretty simple. The moon moves into Sagittarius in the middle of the night as you're sleeping, and we're going to look towards another possibility. Because it's Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, a spontaneous expression of truth, faith, and belief that can possibly override global dysfunction is what we are questing for. All of us want to learn new things when the astrology is like this, and we're hungry for a taste of anything other than this fear and hate that we are being force-fed. When you combine the fiery moon with the Leo sun, it gives an energy and attitude that wants to make a change. Use this energy to have confidence and to move enthusiastically forward in some way. Mercury is moving into an opposition with Jupiter. It will be exact tomorrow. You want to get going on an idea and plan. You may tend towards exaggeration, but when you do that, you risk missing out on something very important. Okay, my quote for today. Life is a dance of opposites. What you have done in your past must be transformed into its opposite and integrated into a position where you have access to the wisdom and wounding of both, so that you can develop clarity and discernment. I was looking at this because I was dealing with a client this morning, and we were looking at her North Node. And the North Node, South Node trajectory in astrology, always tells you what you were doing in a past life. And inevitably, the North Node is 180 degrees opposite that. So in all of who we are as existing, we go from one extreme to another extreme. And we have to in order to maintain the balance. And that is just the realm of duality. We're in this realm of duality, and that rule applies to everything, absolutely everything. Certain trees cannot go to seed and plant more trees and bushes if they don't go through a fire. That the fire and the energy of the fire pops the seed buds open and allows the seeds to spread. So out of great destruction comes great change and transcendence. And everyone here is doing a swing of their North Node, South Node. So what you've been in other lifetimes is not what you're trying to be in this lifetime. And you're trying to swing it into this opposite direction, and we resist it. It's like we know we're supposed to, we feel compelled to go in this other direction, but the past is luring us back in certain ways. The other quote that I had today was, there is a point when you stop seeking and you start accepting. And I think that that's a really important piece. Throughout my youthfulness, from my late teens through my 20s, through my 30s, into my 40s, I was definitely seeking, going to workshops, seeking information, seeking to know, meditations, personal growth experiences, rebirthing, connected breath therapy, Reiki, body work, acupuncture, trying to understand the deepest side of myself. I was seeking, and that is absolutely normal. It is absolutely a progression. It is absolutely necessary. It is absolutely the process that you're supposed to be in. And now here I am in the month of August. I will be 60. And I'm looking at it and recognizing that for the last 10 years, I've been actually in a very different process of accepting. I'm not seeking more information at this point. I'm actually in the process of accepting what I have and integrating it in a very, very different way. And it is a much calmer place because I'm not striving. I always say striving is one of those things that is always based on ego. And I remember when I was meditating in my late teens, and I remember the angels said to me, "You are not the first. You are not the last. You are in the big group in the middle." And what was happening was that I was trying to be the first person home in enlightenment. I was trying to be the first person that got there. And there was so much ego involved in that. And I was like, oh, I'm in ego. Like I'm striving. I'm thinking that I have to get somewhere. And the joke always about the enlightened people that they say is that once they got to enlightenment, they realized they always were. But what they realized was that their human condition combined with their human condition and wounding and weaknesses combined with their ego was creating a shell or a veil that didn't allow their authenticity to effectively move in this world and move in this dimension. And so part of the journey is about not about striving, but about stripping away that which you think is so important about you, and just learning to be more and more authentic. Okay, so my blog for today. I obviously love astrology for the insights that it can give you to make sense out of some of the experiences that you have had in this life. I always notice that the validation comes when I have been willing to accept the insights of my own experience and then want to understand it on a deeper level. There is that phrase, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. For me, the teacher is also insight or a piece of information given at a critical and most interesting time. I have had so many amazing psychics and teachers and healers and gurus and yogis and bodhisattvas tell me very truthful information, but then spent the next 20 plus years learning the many configurations that my psyche had created in order to unwind, heal, and learn around that information. The more I have learned, the more interconnected it all is. There are no accidents or mistakes. You have not done things wrong. You did things in order to learn critical lessons that could not be learned any other way. Pain and suffering is a great motivator to finally decide to dive deep within to discover those hidden places of awareness that you have avoided, shunned, and judged. I'm always amazed at how we become that which we judge. That is so obvious at the moment. We are what we project onto others. We see hate in others, but cannot see the hate within us that is spewing unconscious venom out into the world through our superiority. We cannot see what has been disowned within us, but we see that disowned self projected onto others. We judge others and then become that which we are not. We are sure we are not. We are so blinded by this density and this duality in this world and the complexity of emotional suffering here that we are running and rushing around in the confusion caused by this density, wreaking havoc in the world and adding to the problems and not offering up solutions. We are the cause of so much suffering in others, and we do not see in our arrogance, insecurity, busyness, and self-importance. I bring this up because of the intensity of this moment in history. Terrible things are coming because of our inability to see our own shadow. Many years ago, I was working with an amazing group of men and women that wanted to become professional psychics. They were skilled and committed. They had talent, but what everyone lacks is insight into the shadow. I worked with them for years and I kept saying, okay, everybody, we need to look at shadow. Who has something that they are noticing that they are hiding from, judging others because of it, or are avoiding dealing with? And no one would answer, except one woman who was doing her best to look at issues. Unfortunately, she was looping on a wound and not willing to work through it, but wanted to just keep playing it out again and again and again, which is one of the failings in humanity, which made others not want to share or give feedback. There was a point when I saw that I was doing exactly what they were doing. They were my own mirror. I was looping on a shadow place where I believed that I was needed and I thought I was helping, but I was simply avoiding my own shadow. What I needed to do was to stop and say, my value is not in what I have to give others. Once I saw it, I stopped the group. They were upset and wanted to continue, but continuing dysfunction is never a good idea. What is so hard is to notice where my own ego got attached and was feeding my wound and their dysfunction. They were my shadow, and I did not need them to go do the inner work necessary to grow. I needed to do the work. In fact, I needed to set them free. I needed to trust that their pieces were not what was my gifts to them. I needed to realize that I did not have their next level of answers. I needed to trust that each of us will find our way back home and back to sanity. I needed to free them to walk their own path rather than mimic mine. It was a powerful moment. In that moment, I also realized that I had done that same process over and over again. There was something inside of me that says, this is another loop. Loops are not going to get you anything. You have to radically change and go in a completely different direction. You are attached to this pattern and it has become old, boring, and complacent. You are going to get stuck in your own manifestation and success if you do not move now. And then I would always move. It always feels like leaping off a cliff of an old reality. It always is scary. It is always thrilling, and it is always the right choice. What do you need to walk away from right now? Do you see the writing on the wall that you are going to have to go back to school or change careers? Do you see that this world is so radically altering that old methods and modes of manifestation are rapidly disintegrating? Something is about to be born. We are in massive labor pains. We do not know if we can make it through. We do not even know what we are birthing. But what I know is that whatever it is something that is needed on a global level to awaken us to our insincerity, blocked compassion, blindness to the suffering of others, and abject fear. And while that is a painful realization, it is a moment of truth that will transform everything you thought you knew. Then that is how we will find the answers we are seeking that seem so elusive. Because the problem can never be solved on the level that it was created. Thanks, everybody. You guys have a great day.